engine revving. It's my profession. Trabajando en tu metal hasta esas cosas.
Hi, papi.
Estoy trayendo algo nuevo. I'm bringing something new. Esto es algo bueno. This is something good. I'm ruthless like a diamond thief, patient as the king. Just to crack the code, man, the thrill is so sweet. I'm gentle, you're my baby. If I drive, I go steady. Move like a cat, it's time to show me how you. Si que hablar sin tocar, puede ser malo para ti. Pero me encanta ver cuánto tu cuerpo me quiere más. Construye desde tu base con mi martillo. Pues comencé con tu pared. ¿Entiendes? Estoy trayendo algo nuevo. I'm bringing something new. Esto es algo bueno. This is something good. Estoy trayendo algo nuevo. I'm bringing something new. Esto es algo bueno. This is something good. I slap my foot on the pedal. Engine revving. It's my profession. Trabajando en tu metal hasta esas cosas destruyen y está gritando. Our destination isn't just anywhere. I know these roads. I can get it there. Si mi cuenta de banco, cariño, esta de la personalidad. Cuenta, venga.
Muéstrame todo nuevo. Quiero explorar contigo. No necesito nadie más. Show me something new.
Estoy trayendo algo nuevo. I'm bringing something new. Esto es algo bueno. This is something good.
Solo por ti. Hi, papi.
Estoy trayendo algo nuevo. I'm bringing something new. Esto es algo bueno. This is something good. I'm ruthless like a diamond thief, patient as the king. Just to crack the code, man.
Okay, I think you heard me one time too many. I'm going to pump everyone in. Give me the green light, sir. Give me the green light. Let me know when.
You're good.
Oh, I'm hot? All right, let's do this. And of course, you're keeping it ugly with me, Joe Ugly, the Dean of the Independent. On videos and voices of the unheard. We are, of course, 2V Stream, the Global Youth Media Initiative. Now, yesterday when I was on yesterday's show, I had the Right Reverend Minister, Pastor, Counselor Samuel T. Rossley. I have a whole lot more titles that I would have thrown this way, but I may as well don't. And the only reason why I have to bring him back today, but because we wanted to come touch base on the Supreme Court hearing yesterday on affirmative action, but you know, it was, like I said, the Right Reverend Minister, Pastor, Counselor. So I had to bring in reinforcement for my mental health. So also tonight in the building, it's going to be no other than the great Dr. Taiwo. You're gonna have to say your last name for me, bro, because he's straight from the mother. Well, no, he's
Alonge.
Alonge. Okay,
That was the second one.
That's about as good as it's gonna get for you. So anyway, and one thing you will hear from this man, as you guys all know, those of you who know him, he's gonna be on. Well, I figure he should be here with Doc because this man has some serious anger issues with me.
Oh my God.
Oh man, let's keep it ugly. First of all, you know, I'd like to touch here with you, Doc. Actually, I'm looking back here. Since I have you right here, I may as well get started with you, sir. Sam Rossley, may as well wrap up real quick on what we were talking about yesterday. I don't see it as being real quick. I'm quite sure it's going to integrate into what we're talking about mental health. Let's cover in regards to the Supreme Court uh, hearing yesterday with Justice Tatanji Brown Jackson. Did I say that right? Or did I?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, got to make sure I don't mess up a great sister's name. You know, I'm getting used to the new name. You know, the new Supreme Court Justice. That's a sister of all. So anyway, the hearing that they were having was in regards to affirmative action in colleges, where you now have white students who are suing Harvard, and I believe it was North Carolina was the other.
University of North Carolina, yes.
University of North Carolina, and
they're suing them on behalf of Asian American students
and whites, by the way, both. Yeah, it's a combination of both. But the thing that was
the Harvard thing is, I'm not sure what the UNC. Yeah, the UNC thing is white students.
Right.
You're right.
So because the case had came together as one, they joined forces as one.
Right.
And the thing is, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson had to recuse herself. That's why the case became a two-part case, because she had to recuse herself because she was on some board. I can't recall what was the board she was on at Harvard. So she recused herself, obviously citing it as a conflict of interest, totally unlike Clarence Frogman Thomas up there, you know, who refuses to recuse himself on the January 6th issue. But just to elaborate a little.
And by the way, the recusal meant that she was not involved in the discussion. She was not involved with that case in any way.
Right.
I served on the Civilian Review Board,
Mm-hmm.
and I recused myself from one of the cases that we were doing.
Right. Just 1 second, if I could just interject. For those of you who are not aware what the Civilian Review Board, if you're not from the city of New Haven, not listening to us, the Civilian Review Board is a board here in the city of New Haven that work in tandem, maybe, with the police department, work together with review police.
Right.
Report.
I mean, we did work with internal affairs to some degree, but our responsibilities were separate from them, where we reviewed complaints brought by civilians. And like I was saying, there was a case that I need to recuse myself from, which meant, because I knew the definition, I confirmed it, whatever, but I had to convince members on the board that recusal meant I was not involved in the case at all.
Right.
You know, and they were like, that's not what it means. Like, yeah, that's what it means. And she was not involved at all in that case because she recused.
The person who okay.
Brown Jackson was not.
Right. She totally recused herself.
Right.
But about that case, there's something that you wanted to highlight, and we ran out of time yesterday. I'm going to let you continue.
Well, you know, I listened to some of the oral arguments, and it was the part where Brown Jackson was not a part of the case. So it was the Harvard stuff. But I'm listening to this argument, and you know, and we did talk yesterday about how, you know, things external to a reality impact the reality, or at least should. They talked about affirmative action, and we seem to only talk about affirmative action in terms of race. What that actually means, affirmative action in the college situation, the university situation, in terms of race, is that a person is applying, and they get some extra consideration based on the race. The extra consideration that they get has little to do with their academic, you know, stuff. Their academic stuff is you know,
already
considered and all that kind of in the same way, but that has nothing to do with it. Again, it's because of past, you know, discrimination, this kind of stuff. But there are other forms of that kind of help to students that has nothing to do with their academic standing. Legacy. I heard an Asian student, an Asian graduate of Dartmouth, talk about how there were a lot of people at Dartmouth who were there, white students, because of legacy. Right. Legacy is your parents went to school there, you know, and you get extra credit for that. It has nothing to do with what you've done academically.
Right.
And she said there was a lot of students there. I mean, this is obviously anecdotal, but they were not even trying. You know, they got out, they graduated, they got the same kind of jobs that she was able to get. They got the same kind. It's that they didn't even have to go to college because their privilege and their whiteness always, opened doors for them. But they were the ones more than anything else that were keeping Asian students out, not African Americans. But we don't talk about legacy. We don't talk about people getting extra points because they come from a geographical area that they don't have a whole lot of applicants. Sports, we think about sports in terms of football and basketball, but there's a lot of sports at Ivy League schools that there are no black kids involved in. They're not doing field hockey.
Lacrosse,
they're not doing tennis.
hockey.
They're not doing lacrosse. They're not doing rowing,
Hockey.
hockey, that sort of thing. All of those kids are getting extra credit, extra points in their application, but nobody talks about that. They only want to talk about in terms of race and say it's unfair. How is the other stuff fair?
Correct.
If this is unfair, and then the thing they talked about, Sandra Day O'Connor, when this case came before them before the Supreme Court, when O'Connor was on the court, I couldn't find it. I kept looking for it. Google is sometimes just very horrible when you're trying to do a deep dive on and stuff.
You don't mean that, Google? We're still with you.
I'm not.
When our YouTube drop, you'll know.
Hold on. So, I was trying to find it, exactly what this thing was, because I've just heard them talk about it. So I'm on the periphery of it. But apparently she said something about, 25 years from now, and I'm assuming that's from her time, of the time that they decided that case, that it shouldn't be it shouldn't be necessary to continue to have race conscious admissions. And I'm listening to this thinking 25 years from now, racism is going to be gone over. 25 years from now, the effects of past racism is going to be done. Are you actually absolutely kidding me right now?
400 years, 25 years, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, those 25 years,
it's going to wipe out 400 years of privilege.
Of privilege and all the other realities that exist for white people to be in spaces of privilege and preference. That didn't even make any sense. Now, and they're trying to overturn that precedent. It's like, yeah, we can forget about that. So it's just ridiculous how they approach affirmative action in the first place. It's ridiculous how they don't consider other areas of affirmative action, because that's what they are. If it's the same effect and the same system, it's the same thing. I don't care what you call it.
Correct.
But you put a black face on it, and all of a sudden it's something horrible, it's unjust, and all this kind of stuff. Because as the sister, I can't remember her name, Anderson, Dr. Anderson, chair of the African American Studies Department at Emory University, wrote the book White Rage. Her thesis is basic. White rage is ignited with black aspiration. Not even black success. Black aspiration.
When you said
we've
that,
got to stop.
I'm back around. My head just spin. I almost look like
we got to
Sybil.
stop them from aspiring to be in the spaces where we are, and certainly cut down the numbers. And the fact that the other thing I learned in Michigan and California, they have, I think because of their constitution or whatever, cut out race conscious admissions, and those schools have been struggling. University of Michigan, the California system, probably I think the largest one in the country, UCal, Berkeley, and all the other, Santa Barbara, whatever. They have been struggling to try to UCLA been struggling to try to match those numbers, those diversity numbers in terms of African Americans, and they have not been able to do it because they can't consider race in their admissions, decisions anymore, and they are losing those students. They're losing those parts, and a lot of students won't even apply there because they know that chances
less.
Have been diminished. And those are the two states that they talked about. There are other states, Florida, obviously, but Florida. I'm from Florida.
Florida, man.
From Florida too. Yeah. I know Florida.
I'm not gonna hold it against you too. But
right.
Go ahead.
They have done that, and I think it was like 10 or 12 states in the in the union have taken away race conscious admissions. Too many of y'all getting educated.
Correct.
Too many of y'all are getting educated in spaces that are reserved for and supposed to be reserved for white people. Too many of y'all are getting Ivy League degrees.
Yep.
this sort
Yep.
of thing, and they're trying to, stop it.
Regularly. You mentioned something about it was if the person who of color shows up, it's not the academic part that's being counted. That's already been proven. Now it's about if it's if you have a black person, white person, is take into consideration all of their setbacks. Like I always say, it's you know you have these individuals, and there was a set out group of people who were running corporate America in the 80s. And their mentality was because it rolled, shit rolls downhill, and it rolled downhill, and you hear it, within. It eventually gets to management and lower management, and you hear it. When I was a younger person in corporate America, and some of the things you hear is you realize what they were trying to do was just put a black face there. It was not if the person, which affirmative action was, if you have two individuals that are qualified, equally qualified, take a closer look at the person of color. But that was not the case. They deliberately put people who they knew were underqualified so they could say affirmative action didn't work.
Mhm.
It was a problem. And I remember hearing little things, and I started weaving it together, and I said, damn, these bastards are on a long-term plan here. They're going to wipe out affirmative action in 20 years. Well, it took them a little longer because that was in the 80s, but they're getting the job done. They're
Yes.
not playing.
Yes, it's always a long-term plan,
Mhm.
because I mean, you 20, 25 years, whatever.
Mhm.
The post antebellum South, they've been doing it since then.
Right.
Trying to fight for rights to not be given, and then the minute they are, trying to take them away, slow rolling. I mean, the Supreme Court, statement. I didn't realize this until I was in college. It had a white English professor who pointed this out. Brown versus Board of Education,
Mhm.
right? The decision was that they should integrate the schools with all deliberate speed. That phrase does not make any sense.
When you think of it.
Deliberation is
It's
slow. Speed is fast. How do you slow fast something?
Well, you can fast slow.
Fast. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So they're taking things away the minute that they're given. And if it was lack of qualification, and I
Mhm.
said this to a Harvard student, if it was a lack of qualifications in terms of affirmative action stuff, we would have planes falling out of the air
Mhm.
that black people were piloting based on affirmative. They got into the program based on affirmative action.
Mhm.
Patients would be dying at a huge
Alarming
alarming rate because of
Mhm.
black doctors and this sort of thing. That's not happening.
Mhm.
The anger is, again, aspiration, success.
Mhm.
You have a woman on the Supreme Court
Mhm.
who is not a black face on white supremacy,
Mhm.
like Uncle Thomas is.
There you go.
And
Whoa,
look where she
frog.
came from.
Mhm.
Her parents were lower middle class people. Her father, went to law school late in life,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But she also came out of a high school where the list of students who were on the debate team reads like a who's who of achievement in America.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw the article
The
in the
sisters,
paper,
yeah.
and it was like,
Mhm.
professor, lawyer,
Mhm.
judge, psychologist, psychiatrist, MD. I mean, that list of people that came from that program, not just that school, but that particular debate team.
Mhm.
And then she gets into Harvard.
In her family as well as there's the same thing. I mean, they have a great resumes. Their resumes are pretty strong too.
But they're
in her
not
family.
they're not that level.
Mm.
Her brother went to the military. She had policemen in her family, uncle or whatever was a policeman. Her mother was like a teacher and something. I forgot what her father was before he went to
No, the
law
mother
school.
and parents I understand, but the kids they really excelled. Which I give credit.
But where she's coming from, she ain't coming
Mhm.
from her siblings. She's coming from her
I
parents.
understand.
And she goes to Harvard.
Mhm.
I'm sure some affirmative action thing happened. But when she got there, how well did she do? She
Oh.
graduated with honors.
Mhm.
She goes to Harvard Law School. When she gets there, how does she do? She graduates with honors. So it's not that affirmative action is putting people in position who shouldn't be there. Clearly, when they get there, they are succeeding. They are doing well.
You just highlighted something that I might have to push back on. Clarence Bullfrog Thomas. Supreme Court justice, if we may. Uh, he was not a splendid student across the street.
Affirmative action in place when he went to law school.
Yeah, he got in with affirmative action.
Yeah, that's right.
So no wonder why he's against it, because he didn't deserve it.
I mean,
when you think about it,
Can I comment on that?
Regardless of what we think about him and how we feel about his politics,
Yeah,
he was not. He didn't fail out of school. He was in the middle of his class, whatever. And what do we say? What do you call a person who graduates last in their class from Yale Medical School? You call him doctor.
Doctor.
What do you call somebody who graduates in the middle of the class from Yale Law School? Doctor. You call him attorney.
right.
Oh yeah, true.
Right. And so that's what Thomas was. I think personally, Clarence Thomas saw that in terms of black people, there was a lot of competition on the left.
Yep.
So he went somewhere where there wasn't a lot of competition because he wasn't a standout over here, and he was over here. Clarence Thomas was Malcolm X devotee when he was in college.
There's a lot of people who know how to regurgitate some stuff and stand up for the moment. I think we're seeing this man's true self right now.
Really, he just did that for a class project.
No, I don't.
I'm going to tell you what. Let me explain why. When he ran the what was that? The
Civil Rights
the
Commission.
Civil Rights Commission of
he was already over there.
Yeah, but when he was running that, I can tell you right now, the thing in place that you had to go through to try to prove yourself been discriminated against, and his unit was one of it, and I know because I went through it, and I can tell you right now, I just look at it and call it a big joke. Before you could sue someone, you had to get them to approve it. In order to sue someone for a racial discrimination lawsuit, you had to get the what was the name of that department? And it was part of the part of the government that he was running at the time. And it pisses me off that it's with me, but anyway, I know because I wanted to bring a discriminated action against someone, but I could not because that organization had to see it as racial discrimination before I could have sued. And this was in 1980, 88, 89.
What does that have to do with Clarence Thomas not being who he was when he was in college?
He was the head of that thing, and that was his policy. That was his policy.
But he was already on the right when he got put in that position. He was put in that position by Republicans.
Oh, okay.
I think what the Reverend's saying, I actually really agree with a lot of people who rise to that level and kind of see where competition is, where they can elevate a lot faster when they go to that side.
I know a lot of people does that. A lot of people does that. But my thing is that the frustration that goes with that, and don't even get me started. So I guess this is where you come in, sir.
Nice.
I would like to say, Dr. Taiwo.
I just wanted to make two comments really quickly about what the Reverend was saying.
Don't add stress. Take it away.
Yeah. So to your point about affirmative action and that being separated from what we see happen with white students, there's a recent study that came out, I think in 2019, 2020, talking about Harvard. 43% of white students at Harvard are either legacy, the children of very wealthy donors, or athletes. And when we talk about athletes, it's not just basketball and football. It's a lot of sports that are dominated by white people.
Exactly.
Dr. King was one of the things he mentioned was kind of delineating welfare from like bailouts by banks, right? We talked about when money was even given to the government, to black people, it's called welfare. When money's been given to the government, to corporations, to white people, it's called bailouts. It's called stimulus, right?
Correct.
And some of that same logic is being used for admissions, where we talk about what are legacy students being called legacy. We're not even naming it. We're just saying they're getting admitted, but we're kind of putting a stamp on, the black people are here because of this.
Right.
And when you use that fancy language, then things like what's happening right now, then we can litigate, we can go to the Supreme Court, we can remove things that have benefited black people in some ways. So those are two things I wanted to mention. I also wanted to shout out Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She went to my high school, Palmetto Senior High School.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So
were you on the debate team?
I was not on the debate team. She was way cooler than I was. She was there a little bit before I was too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
I don't think that team sustained what was happening when she was there. That part of that reality that made her a great deal of what she is today. I don't think it's sustained.
And that's usually based on the leadership.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody retired or whatever,
Right,
and
exactly.
they didn't keep it going.
Someone did not step up. But Dr. Taiwo Alonge uh, is a psychiatrist, not psychologist, psychiatrist. Man could actually prescribe some medicine. But there are some things that I would like to touch base on, and the different types of mental health issues that plague our community. But one that I saw, we've all heard of the bipolar, the depression, we but BDD, body dysmorphic disorder. Are you familiar with that one?
Of course.
Explain a little bit more about that, especially parents who might be listening to this, and some of the causes that could cause BDD.
Yeah, yeah. So body dysmorphia and eating disorders and related disorders are not my particular area of specialty, but obviously I see it, particularly with young people. It just relates to feeling dysphoric or sad or dissatisfied or having negative feelings around what your body appearance looks like. It's very common. I think particularly in the social media world that we live in right now, where there's a lot of representation of certain bodies, what the algorithm likes to put out, people want to kind of start to look like certain pictures instead of the body that they have normally. So it's pretty rampant, particularly young kids that I get to see in the emergency department, in clinic, or in the hospital. And it's pretty challenging. I mean, the best intervention for that are therapy and things of that nature.
Is there anything that I know when it gets to this to disorder, of course, someone should be in therapy. But is there anything that you could share with a parent who may be listening right now that you think that may be able to get them on that path, or how do you help them get a child to get in front of you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think particularly as it pertains to like Black people, when we think about mental health, we often think it's something that's just like a decision someone makes. We
Right.
think of someone's depressed, snap out of it, just go out and do your thing, or shake it out, or go run outside, or whatever, right? But obviously, when someone gets to a point of having a disordered mental health condition, you really want to offer them firstly a lot of love and acceptance, right? Understanding that someone getting to the point in which they have body dysmorphia or any mental illness isn't just something they decided to do that day. There's conditions, there's conditioning, there's habit forming that takes a lot of time and build up. So what I would say to a parent listening to this, thinking about who has a kid who might be struggling with body dysmorphia or any eating related disorder or image or self-image related issues, just offering a lot of love, a lot of support, affirming them for who they are, and then obviously getting them plugged in with a doctor or psychiatrist, kind of beginning to talk with them about these things and beginning to do that process. I know oftentimes a delay to care that Black people see when it comes to mental health. We definitely have a larger gap in terms of time to getting the appropriate care compared to white people. So when these things come in, it's never too early to talk to a therapist, to talk to a doctor about these things. They're not going to do things that make it worse. In fact, they might make it better.
Is it the delay? I know sometimes in our community we do have that mental delay where we just don't want to, that social stigma that we don't want to put on each other. But it also, what is the ability to get hold of a therapist sometimes could be very challenging. I believe that for a person of color, a Black person, and it's my strongest belief that well, first of all, there are not that many Black therapists or that are out there. Period. How do you navigate something like that? And because at the end of the day, it's trying to get someone to understand your circumstances and get a grasp of it. And we know in other parts of life, we could pinpoint how people who don't look like us just don't understand our circumstances. So how do we get to that? I mean, how do we navigate that? Because that is, I believe, will be another challenge within itself.
Yeah, that's a very tough one, and I think there's not a clear answer to it just yet, but it makes me think of a few things. I think firstly, when we think about stigma, the stigma comes from somewhere, right? And there is a real history in which mental health, psychiatry has had negative effects on Black communities, and I think it's important to talk about that. Medicine as a whole has a negative history with Black people, and a lot of our avoidance of those systems doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a history of hearing things from our grandparents, our great grandparents, knowing things that happen to relatives, and saying, "Oh, that place is not for us," right? And again, the disparities that exist are a lot of the design of different therapies, medicines didn't really have Black people in mind, right? So that's one thing to understand. But I think Firstly, it's also important to know that there's a lot of work being done to address those disparities. There's more work that can be done, but there's a lot of work being done from that standpoint too. The other part that you're mentioning about, our lack of representation in mental health, whether it's a therapist, psychologist, social worker, psychiatrist, there's not a lot of us. There really isn't. The percentages are small. When I think about medicine as a whole, less than 5% of doctors are black. When you look at psychiatry, it's even smaller than that. I know within psychology and within social work, it's also similar. And, with the mental health burden heating up in this country and people now having increased awareness on the need for it, there's definitely a dearth in terms of not having therapists or psychiatrists or mental professionals to go to. And that is really, really challenging. In terms of what you can do from that standpoint, there's really great resources to find. I know Psychology Today is really wonderful in that you can actually click different demographic information in terms of a therapist you want. If you want a psychiatrist, psychologist specifically, there's another website called Alma. There's a website and social media page called Therapy for Black Girls that anyone can really use, and they have really good content there.
But let me ask. I'm old school.
Yeah.
And I like to, if I'm going to tell someone my problems, my issues, I want to see the person.
Yeah.
Now I know a lot of these. I see these commercials run on television that shows you could dial up to in some cases you could dial up to a therapist, or you could text with a therapist. That level of disconnect, and maybe you can help me with that as well. I don't feel safe about that. What would you say to someone who's carried my same belief?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of options. Again, there's probably not enough mental health clinicians to address the mental health needs of this country.
But am I speaking with a personal algorithm? Because that's one of the things that I'm always concerned about.
Yeah, so with respect to technology, there's a big boom in mental health tech. Digital health platforms are really exploding. Lots of venture capital money going into those things. And you're speaking to a person. So in a lot of the kind of bigger companies, right? Whether it's BetterHelp, there's new apps for kids blanking on right now, like Brightline.
But that's okay. They're not paying us right.
Yeah,
so let's go ahead.
But you are speaking to they are speaking to kids. I mean, you are speaking to a person for real. Again, when you talk on the phone, you're speaking to someone for real as well. Again, there's different comfort levels around who you want to see. Like some therapists still allow in-person visits, particularly in the pandemic. There's also virtual visits that you can do as well, which helps increase access because sometimes it's hard to make time out of your day to travel to go to a therapist and then travel back and make it to work and all of those things. So that helps increase accessibility. But you certainly don't have to use an app if you don't feel comfortable using one, but it's certainly things that helps people. I think particularly when there's limited resources, it's a proper and necessary stopgap to help people who might have needs that can't be addressed acutely.
I don't know if you talked me down off the ledge yet. I might be like Uncle Gus up back in the, on the third floor back room where you feed me through the bottom of the door. I don't know. I might end up. But Sam Rusley, what say you?
No, I have a question about something you said in the very beginning, where the kids are using social media and they're seeing these bodies and they're being dissatisfied with theirs. Is it just the visual, or is it also like the clout that they're seeing that body and they're saying this is why they have this clout, or the money? This is why they're getting this money because they have that body and therefore I want that. Is that a part of it?
I think it's a combination of all the things you mentioned. I mean, when you think about social media and their algorithms, it's essentially trying to keep you on the phone as long as possible, right? Keep you on their app as long as possible because there's ads that get played inside and you get more viewers. You spend more money when you're on your phone, right? And the certain images that are pumped are the ones that have the most popularity. If kids are on social media and they post things as well, they want their content to have a lot of likes, a lot of shares, and things of that nature. So they are going to try to emulate the bodies that are the most popular, the ones that are coming their way. Yeah. So it's the clout, and then obviously a lot of social media influencers make money. I think if you looked at how many people make significant life-changing money, it's probably a very, very tiny percent, but nonetheless, everyone's striving towards that. So those things kind of feed into behaviors and actions, and then people start saying, well, I'm dissatisfied with the way I look because the way I look, the algorithm is not going to push me forward. I'm not going to get the likes, the shares, and then they start to feel dissatisfied. It's only part of it. Body dysmorphia existed before social media, but it's definitely been exacerbated by
That's the key right there. the algorithm, a lot of these algorithms are designed to, one is called biometric mirroring, and they're designed to literally pinpoint if they see obesity, if they see blackness, and they will naturally suppress that. So that hurts a lot, especially when a lot of young kids are seeing themselves making career out of social media, having a lot of followers, a lot of likes, and knowing that I can just do this and don't have to clock into work. I can be my own boss. And then when you have an algorithm competing against that, that level of stress, especially for a black kid looking for a way out, and they're only seeing it that one way, well, you know the rest of the story.
Anxiety and panic attacks, another big one in our community. And anxiety, a lot of it get in our community get misdiagnosed as just being bad. And talk with if you could share with me, maybe there's a parent listening that you can help them identify when a kid is showing anxiety or even a panic attack.
Definitely. I mean, I think right before that, one of the things you mentioned is, kind of again an issue with our field as a mental health field, right? We have things like oppositional defiant disorder, just disruptive disorders. We have conduct disorders that are disproportionately given to Black kids, right? As instead of diagnoses like ADHD or anxiety, like you're saying, right? The way anxiety or ADHD might present in a young Black person from a cultural perspective to a white person seeing that, they might think that is threatening behavior or disruptive behavior, and then say we need to punish or penalize someone from that standpoint. So again, speaks to the importance of having culturally competent and culturally humble clinicians, right, and having Black psychiatrists and people who understand things from that standpoint. But in terms of anxiety and the way that can look, and panic attacks, that can look, I mean, they can look like almost like classically people can feel like they're having a heart attack. They can feel like their heart's really beating fast. They can be very short of breath. They can be sweating. Their thoughts are racing uncontrollably. The way that might look in a child can be very similar to all those things. A parent might see a kid that is very distracted. It just seems like they're running all over the place. Their self-care is starting to dwindle and fall apart in a way that isn't typical to the way they see their kid normally behaving. And I think when you're starting to see just shifts or dramatic changes in behavior, like decline in functioning in school, things of that nature, loss of friendships or not doing the things that they normally do, I think that's the time to check in and just kind of talk to your kid and say, hey, is everything okay? When they see their pediatrician, you can kind of let your pediatrician know, hey, I'm a little bit worried about these things regarding mental health. Can you ask these questions? Can we talk about these things? Just to catch it before it goes too long and then causes more serious problems.
I think one that you just highlighted was when you start seeing constant changes in friends. I would think of that as a parent, because at some point that is one that you could pinpoint to without saying that he's just being bad. Massive changes of friends, I would think. I'm not the expert. That's you. I would think that was one that you could look at and say, well, why is my child changing so many friends? Is it really my child lashing out? Are they going through anxiety or something like that? Because anxiety, oh my God, it's just that feeling, that thing. One child explained to me, it's like feeling your chest coming through your mouth. And I could not help that personally myself, because I'm not trained. I had to connect them with one of our strategic partners a few years back to try to get that child help. And I can only imagine, and I'm an adult, and I could just imagine when that feeling of feeling like your chest is coming through your mouth, everything just coming, and then not just what you ate, but everything that's inside. You start feeling hollow inside. And that I only know this because I asked, please explain it to me, so I can at least talk to the person who I'm going to refer you to give them some form of idea. And that was the best that it could have given me. And I was like, ooh.
It's scary. I mean, and I think with young people in general, us as adults, when we experience things like there's not a lot of new emotions we experience. We experience like greater severity of things sometimes, but we've been around enough to feel things. But for a young person feeling a very unpleasant emotion, that's a feeling, like anxiety. Like as a young person, not having the language or the words to communicate that is so scary, right? And like that's why it's so important as parents to like really check in with your young people and just make sure they're okay. If you're again, I'm not trying to say that anytime there's a change in behavior that means something bad is happening, but
Mhm.
when you notice like really abrupt changes in behavior, just like check in and see what's going on and see what that's about.
Now, when do you realize when it's like borderline personality disorder, which is also BPED, opposed to that's a personality disorder?
Yeah, so with young people, we actually don't try to give them personality disorders because there's still a lot of them in terms of development, in terms of their personality, in terms of the way their brain is thinking, that's still molding. So we tend to hold off on giving personality disorders to kids.
Mhm.
But when you're thinking about an adult with personality disorders, and even a kid, when you're seeing like, oh, this is looking like this person might have some personality disorders, things I look for usually are history of trauma in their life. Was there abuse, neglect, things like that? And then also when I think about someone who's getting diagnosed as depressed or anxious or bipolar, and you're seeing treatments just not work for whatever reason, things that
When you
usually
say
work.
treatment, you mean like um, chemical treatments or any type of
Any
treatment?
kind of treatment, so whether
Okay.
it's therapy, medications, a
Okay.
combination of both, if they're constantly just not under control with the standard treatments, then that makes me think, well, is there some kind of personality component going on here as well? And those have, specific therapies like dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT, is specific for borderline personality disorder. And those are really, really effective and it can help people a lot. So when you're kind of seeing things like that, tendencies like that, where it's like, history of significant trauma and kind of treatments just not really working in controlling behaviors and helping people manage their stressors,
Mhm.
and you sort of think, is there something else going on?
What about depression? Uh, our kids have enough to be depressed. And have you been seeing any uptick because of the things that they hear in the media in regards? And people tend to think younger people are not paying attention to the news and politics, but they are because they're starting to realize, especially Gen Z, they're starting to realize more and more how much politics have to affect on guns in their schools. Have you seen some type of an uptick of anxiety becoming through that's coming through because of what they have to deal with because of what they're hearing in politics and how it's going to affect their safety? Have you heard any of that connection?
Definitely. I mean, the rates of depression are just skyrocketing.
Mm.
There's a strong uptick, particularly among the youth. When we look in our hospitals, obviously someone who's being admitted to a psychiatric hospital is in a place where the safest place for them to be is not outside because we're worried about them being a danger to themselves or other people. And the difference in terms of what we're seeing, the amount of backlog, there's no available beds. And as soon as a bed becomes available, someone's already filling it in. There's never a time where there's just beds chilling in the hospital because that's how much the burden is right now. You talk to young people, you see that how low they are. I think, one of my mentors, Mindy Fully Love, is a psychiatrist, a social psychiatrist, and thinks a lot about how the world itself kind of drives our presentation with respect to mental illness, whether we are becoming depressive because of what we're seeing, anxious about the future. It certainly has a big impact on the kids right now. I think with social media and technology, there's so much more access to the realities of what's going on. I mean, you go through your timeline and it's like you're laughing 1 second, you're crying the next second. Like it's not a normal way for us to process things. Like think about, now you go through your timeline, there's a funny Instagram comedian, and the next is like some devastating news about a school shooting or something happening in the world or something happening in your community. And it's like that shift is just not a normal way for the brain to process.
I didn't even think of that, and that's very
That's
interesting.
so true.
Our kids are going through so much PTSD just based on the stuff that they actually, like you just said, when they're going through the ups and downs of such. Uh, would you recommend that even if a kid is not showing any signs of anything, that they still speak with a therapist just because something could be lingering in the back? Or do you think it's when the air goes out the tire, it's time to fix the flat?
I think seeing a therapist for everybody is like so crucial. I think sometimes people are like, oh, like I'm going through a bad breakup, or oh, like work is really hard, I need to see a therapist because I'm like really just I have no other option. And like obviously like if you're at that point, like you certainly see one, but it's just so much better to see one way before that because that person could then help you because they understand you when you're well, they understand you when you're kind of going through the normal ups and downs of life. So then when you really take a dip, they know what they're working with here, right? And they can actually help in that crisis mode. I think it goes a long way, and I think even if you don't have disaster and catastrophe happening, there's a lot of ups and downs in life, right? Whether it's loss, right? Whether it's a breakup, whether it's doing poorly at school or work. that we need to process, because if we don't process, that thing just lingers and it starts to affect our other behaviors. And then when something really, really, really disastrous happens, we don't have the coping skills or the ability to like manage our emotions to handle it, and it can really wipe us out.
You know, I can tell you as far as it goes, breakup. Uh, I concur with you 100 because I waited 56 years before the first time I ever saw a therapist, which I would never recommend to anyone. I would think that it is something that you should get in for. I didn't think of you should consistently doing it, but I'm new at this, to be quite honest with you. A therapist is a necessity, I can actually say, because I did not just had a glitch. I almost fell off the edge. And I'm here to stand today. And a lot of people did not know it. And then on top of it, I was trying to cover up the depths of where I felt. I'll be honest, I could say now, some 4 years later, I literally felt like ending it. I never thought I'd ever. Look, I've been in the military. I've seen all types of stuff. I've been around. I lost friends. I lost my family members. I lost mom, dad, but not dad, father, but all of these things that I've always been the supportive on in my family. My sisters, they always knew, even my brothers, and they always knew that they could turn to me for some type of support. And so I always saw myself as being the strong one in the family. That it was not so much, I don't think it was even so much of the breakup to the individual, but the residual effect, and I can put it out there, the residual was the breakup with my child. And I think that just sent me off the left. I almost went out. I could sit here and honestly say this, and the reason why I'm saying this and sharing this is that to any other father who's out there who may have been going through or have went through this situation, I don't care what level it is. Hopefully it's not at the level I went through. But I will hope that you do seek help. And I want you to know that you're not alone out there. In the process, I mean, it was something like 4 months after my entire life blew up, I lost a childhood friend who went through a divorce and just could not come back. Just prior to that. So that kind of snapped me out of it. But in that moment, I knew, you got to go get help. You can't carry this on your own anymore. Sir?
I want to say this. Sitting here next to a trained medical professional, psychiatrist, and we're talking, I hope, largely, to the Black community. Stop going to your pastor for things that you need to go and see a professional psychologist or psychiatrist for. Pastors, stop acting as if you are trained psychologists and psychiatrists, because we're not. I have had a number of situations where I literally told people sitting across the desk from me, you are above my pay grade right now. You need to go see somebody who can have. I can't read a Bible verse to pull you out of the situation that you're in. We need to stop acting like that as pastors and preachers or whatever, ministers. It is irresponsible. It is malpractice on our part. It is not helpful to the people who need that type of training. Stop acting as if you can talk to God and bring down, some intelligence or some knowledge that you don't have. It is necessary that we direct people to trained people, people who are trained. I don't want anybody coming to me with their car needing mechanical help. You are above my pay grade right now.
But Pastor, pray for it.
Yeah, right. I know how to put gas in, and I know where the key goes. After that, I'm done. Don't come to me for that. Don't come to me for depression and things, other kinds of realities. And pastors need to stop going to the Bible. If you're dealing with somebody with, body issues or whatever, stop digging into an ancient world and telling them that God is not pleased with you doing this and that, because most of the time they don't have any idea what they're talking about.
Correct.
Sometimes they are sacralizing things that are cultural and historic realities that have nothing to do with the faith itself.
Right.
But because it's in there, it's in the Bible, so we got to, perpetuate and support it, that sort of thing. We need to understand that, don't come to me with your legal issues. I am not a lawyer. I roomed with lawyers
Right.
when I was in divinity school. I roomed with Harvard lawyers when I was in divinity school. I am not a lawyer. When I was at Morehouse College, I walked past the Morehouse Medical School almost every day.
Right.
Does not make me a doctor.
Right.
Send people to where they need to go and stop acting as if you are all powerful, you are omnipotent, in this knowledge and information and training, because you're not. That's my part of this.
Well, I gotta say, 100, man. These are the reasons why this guy's definitely like my brother. Not like, he is my brother. For no matter how you like it or not, he's gonna keep it real. In other words, he keep it ugly. He peel back the cosmetics people put on stuff and put it in your face in this royal element. Now, you know how big it was for him to sit there and say, hey, you know what? Don't come to me with certain issues that you should be here in front of someone who is trained in that area. How many people do you think sit up in a pulpit or stand in a pulpit and literally tell you that? That's not so. We don't see that.
Yeah.
And we don't see it in our community. And look, I'm deeply concerned when it comes down to the black community, as he said. Let me help you guys understand something. Listen close to me. I'm looking at the camera. Let me help you guys understand something. One of these things is not like the other. And here's why I'm saying this. Your pastor is not bound by law to keep your secrets. How's that? Your therapist.
They should, but they're not.
Exactly. Your therapist and your lawyer, they're bound by law to keep your secrets. Go see your therapist or your lawyer. Leave your pastor alone. How's that? Continue, sir.
Yeah, so I think there's so many really great things that were said. What Reverend was talking about, I think I appreciate that level of humility and also like lowering of ego, because that's what we all need to do. And even as a psychiatrist, there's things that come to me that are outside of my pay grade and I need to direct it somewhere else, and we all have to really apply that. I think what often happens too, for me, I'm a frontline worker, but like a lot of the issues around mental health don't come to me first. They come to other places, whether it's a family member, whether it's a pastor, a friend, a teacher. And that's why it's so important for us to know what resources are available to us and being able to direct them. And it could be really hard because, again, the medical system is so opaque and it's so hard to navigate, but we have to do a better job. I know for me, one of the things that's really important is trying to get plugged into community organizations, trying to work with community members, not just sit on my, medical pulpit and just kind of hope people come to me. It's like I have to really put it out there. And then to what you were saying, I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing this with your listeners, because it's really important, because a lot of people feel these things. I think particularly as Black men, we have been, socialized, habituated to understand that we need to be tough. If issues come our way, I can handle it. People come to me with issues. No one ever actually checks in on me. And it's like when we get knocked on our ass, we're like, well, I just got to get up. And then when we can't get up, we're like, wait, what's going on? We keep trying to get up. And those when you put our hand down and say, hey, we need a little help, right? Whether that's telling people around us, like, hey, like, can you help me out? Or it's finding a professional. I think that's really, really important, because it saves lives. And, when we think about the mental health climate that we're in right now, think about our economic climate that we're in right now, the way our egos are being checked by feeling we can't support our people and we can't support our families, and how that's hurting us, right? Like those things can really wear on us. And I think it's really important for us to be vulnerable with each other. And if we are able to model that to our kids, then our kids become better than us in the future. So that's really important.
Well, you just nailed on two great points there. The vulnerability is being able to express yourself, but you just nailed something even bigger when you said that it's critical that we do this and we can show our kids so they can be better. Not just better as a general statement, better citizens, grow to be better husbands, better wives, better in their relationships, because they're understanding their vulnerability. I think vulnerability, understanding that, helps you to understand your distance. It helps you understand. I just honestly believe that, because you clearly understand this is how far I am willing to go.
Absolutely. I think, again, when we think of, like, when I talk to kids, when I talk to adults, you know, it always goes back to childhood and what happened in the home, right?
Mhm.
What happened or what didn't happen in the home, right? And at the end of the day, if we're able to model really kind of beautiful, loving, nurturing relationships, our kids become really good at that too, and then they can model that to their kids, and it's like it snowballs in a really good way. Usually, snowball is like a negative connotation. We use it positively here, so it's important.
Interesting. Another part of the equation, therapy. People, we're up here saying get therapy, get therapy, get therapy. Right now, there's a lot of economic downside right now for a lot of people, especially in our community. We got people who are working 2-3 jobs, and they're saying to themselves, I don't have the money to go get therapy
All the time.
all the time. What do you say to those individuals before they blow a gasket?
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. I mean, again, I think about my mentor, who's a social psychiatrist. Like, for us in the mental health world, part of our obligation also has to be to think about these larger issues that come to us and why people are presenting the way they're presenting, right? Like, people are not just becoming more depressed because Gen Z is more depressed or 2022 means more depression. There's things happening in the world that are
Glad you
affecting people,
highlighted
right?
that.
Like, we're talking about a pandemic that we're still living in. We're talking about economic disaster. We're talking about people who can't buy homes the way people generations before could buy homes.
Correct.
These are important things that are affecting our mental health and well-being, the kind of basic needs that we have of shelter, food, security, family, loving relationships. These things affect us. And if we, as mental health providers, are not also advocating for things that help improve those conditions, we're also just maybe feeding our own pockets, right? And I think it's really important for us to be politically active, to be in our communities, to be active, to be advocating for things that help people. Because I think, for me, I can write a prescription for Zoloft or whatever someone might
Really?
need.
You can? Get that man a piece of paper.
but like,
Hook me up with a Zan, bro.
Wow.
but like more than all of that though is like will make someone feel better is like if they had housing, right? Or if they had some extra bucks in their savings account, right? Like that goes a lot longer than anything that I can do for someone, right? It's like if we can create, if we can advocate for a society that, people like me don't need to exist, at least in my profession, like I would love that. And I don't think a lot of people think like that. So.
No, there's always going to be a need for people like you. And I really hope to God that people like you never go away. And more so now than ever before, people, I think, like you said, it wasn't because of 2022 came around and Gen Z is having more. There are more challenges because access to information. And that alone could be a whole lot, just access to information. And like you said, the one thing that this is why I really love these shows. It's like when I have someone come in and they nail something that's been in your face. Like this has been in my face for at least the last, since I've been doing this thing, 15 to 17 years. And I never once thought about it, at least since 2009 with the power of social media. I never stopped once and thought, oh, shoot, 1 minute I am up laughing at a video, and the next there's something traumatic just shown, and those algorithms are not in place to curve them. It's there to keep you on that roller coaster.
It's to serve you.
Yeah, just to serve that. So my thing becomes like, would you put a time frame on how much time someone, because one thing I just started doing recently, watching how much screen time I have. Now the problem is I do that for my phone, but I don't do it for my computer. Screen time, I'm starting to break it down and staying the hell off of, because on your phone at least it shows the different apps that you entered, and it could show how much time in a day that you actually done. And because I look at it, I'm starting to behave myself in a different form, in a different fashion. That's because my frontal lobe is fully developed. I can make those decisions on my own. What about someone who is young, who the frontal lobe is not developed, under 25? How do you tell someone, and I'm not talking about adolescent, I'm talking about someone between 18 to 24. How do you get them to understand that they need to watch their screen time? Because that's a challenging time.
It's challenging. I mean, the screen time, at least with Apple, it comes on Sundays and it slaps you in the face every week. You're like, dang, I thought I did better this week. Right.
No, real talk. Real talk.
Oh, I got a hub for mine. Apple does that?
Yeah,
Apple does. Plantation device.
It hooks a brother up.
Plantation device.
Apple does that.
Like,
Meditation
Android
device.
doesn't do
I'm
it.
sorry, you got to download an app for that? Damn, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
Apple does it.
Actually,
And
I
for-
just go in my
what's the
settings,
r-
but I don't have an
What's
app
the
person.
real
and the
plantation?
MacBook for the computers also does it too for you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it
I don't know
does.
about the
Oh,
PC.
well.
But I mean, nonetheless, though,
You
I
work for
think
Apple?
it's yeah. I think
just
gotta run me a check. But like, nonetheless, though, I mean, I think that is tough, and it's also generationally different because you got to think about there's like people who developed as a person without these things in their face, and there's people who never developed as a person without social media. Like I think about little kids. Like I go into a clinic when I was in med school doing pediatrics rotations, and I'm seeing 2-year-olds who can't say more than 3 words, and they can navigate YouTube with their eyes closed.
Yes,
right?
I have a niece and nephew. 4, they're 4 and 5 now. But my God, to watch them with my sister's phone when they were like 2 and 3, they're just next level. My niece, ever since she was 3 years old, FaceTime with my sister, my other sister, her aunt.
Yeah, so it's like it's the new TV, right? It's the like
It's bigger than that. It's like I'd seen a recent documentary on TikTok algorithms, and they said it just right, and they even hit me. It's social media is the one place where a kid in any place in the world can literally see the world at home in the palm of their hand. So that level of power and responsibility is hard for a kid. And
so that is bigger than television.
It's bigger than television.
It's way bigger than television.
Way bigger.
And obviously, like we can get into it, but like it's advantageous to the corporation.
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of ads. Like you go on Instagram, you say something, your phone's gonna show you an ad for the thing the next minute. Right?
Yeah.
And when you think about young people who are kind of glued to their screens or being sold
Is
things,
that why
right?
I said the word? I was literally talking about a pussycat, and next thing you know, I saw all kind of.
No, there are ways. I know the iPhone. There are ways to turn those things off so that it's not picking up, and giving you suggestions about things to buy because of what you said, or the next video because of what you said. There are ways to turn things off. I couldn't tell you I've done it because I followed somebody like step for step, but it does exist. So you probably can look that up on the computer.
Yeah.
But I literally stopped some years ago. From watching videos of black people being shot, and all that kind of
Correct.
stuff. I literally stopped myself from doing that. I remember when I used to, all especially in the black community, all preachers are frustrated lawyers, right? All lawyers are frustrated preachers. So I was on my way to law school at one point, and I used to watch the law school, not the law school stuff, but the television show, Information, all that kind of stuff, right? But I remember this thing about where, like, a defense attorney, if their client has been accused of killing somebody, and they have the pictures of that dead body or that dead person, they will bring those pictures and put them in front of the jury day 1, day 2, day 3. Why are they doing that? Desensitize.
Yeah, I can see that.
Desensitizing that jury about that. So when that prosecutor gets up and talk about how horribly they're desensitized.
Right.
I applied that to watching these videos of black men getting shot by police. That kind. You're desensitizing me.
Right.
I can talk about it when other people talk about it because I know it happened, but I don't have to watch the video.
So true. You just raised a very interesting one that I want to cover also here with Taiwo. We're gonna run the clock a little. Let everyone be aware. Recently, and I found out this by one of the kids who were here in the program, who had a video and talk about irresponsible journalism. TMZ, I believe, was one who was reporting of the young rapper from Amigos, Takeoff, who was shot in the head and is laying right there on the ground on the floor. And someone, of course, broke out the phone. And my first thing came to mind was how desensitized someone had to be to actually record that.
Yeah.
And it was, okay, you got that.
Yep.
What do? They run first thing to run the social media. They put it on.
Yeah.
And it's all over the net. And it was, this kid is how old? Don't say the name. About what, 18, 19?
Yeah.
18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
And he had
Access.
this on his phone. Access.
It's like,
what do you say to the parent right now who kid has seen this? In case you don't know what we're talking about, parents, because some of you guys will not know.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure if that kid was not here, this kid wasn't here, I would have not known about it either.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a young rapper, very popular group by the way, the Migos, and one of them was shot in the head over a dice game,
Yeah.
over a dice game, and this video was all over the internet. What do you say to a parent who are listening right now, and maybe they should something to deal with their child? I think they need some type of therapy. I saw it and I knew, oh my God. It hit me from a parent standpoint. Good God, if that was my child. Oh Lord, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like you were saying, Robert, people are so desensitized to these kind of things, and it's terrifying. I mean, you go on social media, you see the headline, you go in the comments, and there's the videos being reposted, and people are posting without any there's no warning
filter.
or content warning. Just throw it on there because you're used to seeing bodies on the floor bloodied, and that's really scary. And again, it's when I was thinking about that, what I was saying earlier, it's I'm on Instagram and they're talking about Takeoff being killed. Then the next moment I'm watching Spice Adams making a funny joke on the internet or something like that, right? And it's that is not normal, right? And it's very difficult to even think about how to parent around that because we just are in a world where social media is part of our reality. It's just part of. It's almost like another appendage, it's another arm, another organ for us.
But speaking about another arm, another organ, what I got out of it, I started thinking about the next generation. Maybe it's because I'm at that age in life where I think of younger people, next generation, and I'm thinking, okay, we're seeing this as a problem. The ones who are sharing it, when they get to my age, will they see this as a problem? And then what would their kids be accepting as normal? That's where it starts. This is a thing that hit me. I don't see this as normal. And a 19-year-old showed it to me. What's going to happen when he become my age? Is he going to see this as normal? And then his kids or grandkids, what are they going to be looking at?
I have no idea. That's a really good question. You could really hypothesize about. But I mean, if we think about at least what's being attempted with the metaverse and this kind of virtual reality.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started.
Again, it's kind of digitizing our actual reality in some ways. So now you can't turn it off. It's just part of what we do, right? You'll be instead of traveling somewhere, seeing your friend, you're just gonna log in and you're gonna hang out with them digitally and then log out. And that's kind of the world that we're heading in. And there's a lot of activism around kind of regulating, digitizing our realities and just regulating social media and applications and smartphone technologies and things like that. But it's scary because there's so much money in it that it doesn't feel like there's anything that's going to really stop it.
Right.
And the best thing we can do, I think, as parents, as people, is maybe trying to reduce exposure early on. Again, it's hard because kids go to school and they see what's happening with their peers and they want to do that too. And think about kids will figure out how to do something if they really want to do it. And that's the scary part too. But I don't know, if you're just, as a parent, just kind of creating a relationship and dynamic that there's a lot of trust there, that your kid feel like they can come to you without judgment and criticism, it can help maybe stave off or at least mitigate really severe presentations of anxiety, depression, fear, all these different things that we might see, and maybe you can get help before things get too bad.
Can I just
you can
drop an idea? I'm gonna be one of those parents living in that society, in that type of world. I grew up with the internet. I even myself as a child explored into those content, and I stopped obviously, but it does desensitize. I highlight that. But what I would suggest to a parent, I'll say learn the equipment, learn the internet, learn it. Don't just tell a child, right? Children look for adults to give them guidance. Like if I want to get a car, I'm gonna go to my parents because they know that. So if someone who don't know the internet, doesn't know a software or something like that, telling you this and that, the child is not going to cannot rely on you on that guidance because you don't know it. You're not using it. So if you know it, there's other ways to reach that child because now you're not just coming as, oh, he's just being a parent. No, it's a parent that knows what the heck they're talking about. If that makes any sense.
It does make sense what you're saying, but a slight pushback, and there might be something to it, is because, well, here I am. This is what I do. I'm in the midst of technology. That's what I do daily. Like I stated, I didn't know about this video until a 19-year-old brought it in front of me. If he didn't, I was still in the blind. So, how does a parent now? What if I did not see it? And by the way, he didn't show it to me. He was sharing it in here, and I happened to see it. So it becomes, how does a parent get that type of?
I think the answer to that question is it's above and beyond the parent,
Mhm.
the individual parent. We need to push for regulations from our government to regulate things like this.
Agreed.
We are putting in the hands of children to something that Caleb alluded to, the entire world,
Right.
when we give them a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I grew up in a situation where you didn't even get on the phone.
Right.
Children,
Yup.
they said,
Yup.
"Then you got on
And
it."
if you did,
You
better
got a
be-
house
and I lived,
phone.
and a part of my childhood in Florida was in the country, so we had a party line.
Yeah.
I could literally get on the phone and try
And
to
somebody
talk,
will
and
hear
somebody
you.
else is already
Yup.
on it,
Yup.
or somebody else can pick up the phone. But we're putting these devices in their hands. They're not phones.
Right.
They
They're
are
computers.
they are computers that
Mhm.
you can call people on.
Right.
Really,
Exactly.
that's what they are. And I don't think a parent, because as we were saying, and the doctor said, even if that parent regulates it for their kid, that kid can go to school
Right.
and check out their
It's back out.
kid. And or even if that parent put blocks,
Mm-hmm.
they can go to school and they
Use
with their
their friends'
kids, their
computer.
phone, their friends'
And stop
computer.
calling them phones.
Right, stop
The
calling them
only
phones.
reason why we call them phones is because no one will buy them if they call them computers.
Right, probably.
Sales will be down. You say, hey, you get your new computer.
Yeah, get
Okay,
your handheld computer.
You got your
Right.
handheld computer. No one will buy it. You say a
Right.
phone.
It's a phone.
Talk about desensitizing.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
But I think it's beyond a parent.
That's
right.
I think we need to
I think
start
you're right.
organizing and having significant conversations about this in the
Legislation.
political,
Yes.
realm.
right.
Yeah.
100%. And I think
Yeah, I
it kind of
agree.
even ties into what we were saying before about like, should the pastor be the therapist? Should the parent be the one that's
Right.
the
Mhm.
ultimate regulator of technology? No, there's powers that be that we can advocate for, whether it's through policy, whether it's through elections, things like that.
Yeah.
They're really, really important. Again, it's like, for me as a psychiatrist, there's things that are coming in that I cannot handle or fix, right? And it goes way above that. And then if the volume is just so much, if there's a huge house fire, I'm shooting a little water gun at it. It's not going to take it out, right? You need to call in, the big people to
Yep.
say, hey,
And,
Get the
and-
real
and
fire
the other
department.
part of that
Yeah.
is we need to, as a country,
Mhm.
stop waiting
Mm-hmm.
until something
Something
big
happens.
happens.
Yes.
We know it's a problem
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't have to wait until somebody goes and shoot up 5 schools
Yeah.
and then say,
Correct.
"Oh wow, let's do something about this."
You have
We know it's a problem.
you have European,
Do something about it now.
You have European countries. I can't get specifically to where. I'm not gonna give misinformation, but there are European countries right now that are like looking into regulating that. I know Australia is trying to regulate TikTok and their algorithms, how it's a
But a
security
lot of
issue.
countries do.
Yeah, they're
but the
trying.
first thing that we try to run behind is the First Amendment.
Yeah,
you know,
But
free
what,
speech,
we're
yeah.
really running behind
Mhm.
is business and money.
Thank
That's right.
you.
Business
Thank
and
you.
money corrupts
Right.
everything in America.
Right.
It corrupts education. It corrupts church.
Yep.
It corrupts everything.
With no balances.
And when people start pushing this agenda, saying oh, they're woke, but this is a business. It's making a lot of jobs and those kind of stuff. But it's all about money in America because greed. America is about greed.
Greed. Well, great people. It was great hanging out here with you. I got to thank the Right Reverend Minister, Pastor, Counselor Samuel T. Rossley, and the T stands for Leroy. The T is silent.
I'm used to this.
The T stands for Leroy. The T is silent. But I also want to thank.
The T stands for Thomas, by the way. For those of you who have been hearing him for years say that the T stands for Leroy.
I thought it meant from Tilleroy.
The T stands for Thomas. Thank you.
You're right. I've been saying that for years, and people
Years.
have been like, many people. Oh, the T stands for the Lord. Yeah, the T silent.
Django, right?
Like Django. It's crazy. I was doing that before Django. So anyway, all right. I gotta also thank Dr. Taiwo Alonge. Did I say it right? Alonge.
Good,
All
yeah.
right. No, it's not good. I gotta say it right. Dr. Taiwo. Taiwo. Listen to that. That's a strong name, man. Now, which part of Nigeria?
Nigeria, it's a Yoruba name. It means first twin, so I'm a twin.
All right.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I did meet your twin.
You did.
Look
Brother
nothing
or
alright.
sister?
Brother.
Look
Twin
nothing
brother.
alright. He
Huh?
stole his height. He stole his
Did he steal his profession? What does he do?
stole his profession.
He's a civil engineer, but also doing a PhD in English. He's interested in poetry and Black history, and he's a lot cooler than I am.
He's not cooler than I am. You're pretty cool, man. Don't short sell yourself here. That's for sure, man. I thank you very much for coming in and sharing everything with us. And hopefully, to the parents, you have grasped something that can help you work with your kids, work with your loved ones, and move on and keeping it ugly. That, of course, if you don't know what the ugly really means, it means peeling back the cosmetics people put on things and face it in its purest element. In other words, ugly means real. If you see behind me now, it says no cosmetic zone. That's exactly what it is, a no cosmetic zone. Keeping it ugly. I'm gonna let you. Oh, I gotta hit you guys with the copyright 2019 the present date. All rights reserved. No portion of this program or any content broadcast, stream, or distributed via 2vstream.org or any of its past or current authorized distribution platform is allowed to be recorded, downloaded, or distributed in any form, including print, without the express written consent of its owners or publishers. 2vstream.org is a marketing and distribution outlet of Global Youth Media Initiative. All rights reserved.
We out.